Until you do right by me, everything you think about is gonna crumble.
Who you think you is? You can't cuss nobody. Look at you.
Do right by me.
You're poor, you're ugly, you're a woman, you're nothing at all.
Let's embark on the Ark Republic to read and hear news just published through professional views. There to keep you in queue. We wanted for the days and time to unfreeze the voices and minds. So let the echo be heard, let's shine.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to another Ark Republic Great Conversation. Now, there's been a lot going on in terms of Black Lives Matter protests against racial injustice in the country. And one of the latest kind of initiatives or pushes that we've seen is from WNBA and NBA players, as well as must give also shout out to some college football players too, who have also joined the fight. So in order to discuss what is the role of the professional athlete in this moment, I have with me, what's up, homie?
What's up, bro? How you doing?
I'm fine. He literally is my homie. We are actually both from Los Angeles. And Mikhail Furnace is a native of LA. He's a creative who worked in K through 12 for 15 years teaching Spanish. He also is an interpreter and a translator. He is phenomenal. So those of you looking for somebody who can translate, from English to Spanish, this is the brother you want to contact. He also serves in the capacity of an official for college basketball for the last 10 years, along with serving as an official for women's lacrosse for the last 3 years, and as well as some like minor professional basketball too as well.
No, coach high school basketball.
Okay, sorry, excuse me. So he's coached high school basketball, and also Mr. Furnace is a scholar. His focus is Latin American studies with an emphasis on Haitian American experiences and political economies. And as well, he is a contributor to Ark Republic. So you have seen some of his masterpieces, Grace Ark Republic. What it did?
Nothing much. How you feeling?
I am fine. So we have this moment, we were going back and forth about it and what it means. So I first want to ask the question of, we've had professional athletes protest before in the past, right? But what particularly is special about this moment that we are seeing now?
I think it's the magnitude of NBA athletes that are actually protesting and stepping out in a broader capacity and not keeping their opinions to themselves or being holden to their advertisements or sponsorships. They're actually leveraging that power to try to coordinate changes in their immediate communities on a broad-based scale. And moreover, you have the contribution of the WNBA.
You now have this coalition of women who have a very powerful voice, who speak as mothers, who speak as daughters, who speak as wives, who speak as sisters, who speak as friends, who really are concerned with their brothers, their fathers, their cousins, their husbands, their friends, and whomever. So we have a broader spectrum now. And on top of that, you have the NBA, the WNBA, and their influence with other sports, such as baseball. So if we look at nowadays, what happened last week, the NBA made a stance, the WNBA made a stance, then the NFL made a stance, and so did baseball. And so that even trickled down to hockey.
And,
so now
and even soccer, I want to say even soccer did as well.
Soccer. But soccer has always had an African presence. It may not be, quote unquote, what we term to be Black, but Black is still African. And so we have to connect to the Afrocentric, the diasporic experience to say, hey, this relates to us. And they've been facing the same types of injustices. So I think, what's happened has been a clarion call to all people to wake up and articulate. For those people who've been marginalized, a lot of Afro-Brazilians face the same issues that we faced or still face. And so it resonates now. But I think the power of the dollar, the power of the athletes to connect with their comrades in other sports. And moreover, I think the WNBA, NBA has been very influential. For example, if you take Maya Moore, one of the best players, she sat out this year, you know, and she advocated for a man who was incarcerated and got him released. So we're seeing that impact that they have and what they're willing to do with the support of their NBA brothers.
Right. I would say by far as a collective, the WNBA has been about this life, you know, prior to this season, you know, wearing Black Lives Matters t-shirts, kneeling when the NBA did not kneel, you know, this was to me kind of like a classic Harriet Tubman type of moment, right? The women were definitely leading, the professional women were definitely leading in this. And it probably is because they are underpaid and they don't get, in my opinion, the respect as well as the spotlight that they should get. But it also shows a level of political acclamation that they have, that the NBA at the very least has not collectively shown. But there have been all different types of displays of solidarity, from kneeling to walking off the court to refusing to play games. My overall question is that how effective is this, and can this type of protest be sustained, or what do you think?
Well, I think there's a lot to unpack there. You know, I think even if we build off the WNBA, you look at what they're doing now. They have a senator that's part owner of a WNBA team, Kelly Loeffler, and she's come out with some stances that have been against Black Lives Matter and doesn't believe that the athletes have a place to articulate their views and play sports. So earlier in the season, they organized, all the players coordinated wearing Raphael Warnock, who is running against her in Georgia. So you see that kind of impact and influence that they can have. So when you ask what can be done, this can be done. And if we're speaking of voting, we look at what the NBA players are doing. Part of their agreement with the owners to continue playing is to use privately owned arenas as voting stations, voting outlets, and also in some places registering voters. Some arenas will be allowed to drop off ballots. Some will be exclusively for voting on the day of the election. Others will be open for a period of time. They're working also with trying to coordinate that with the publicly owned arenas. But I think in its broader aspect, I don't think we should ask this onus to cure everything on the NBA players, because part of this is the fans too, and the people. This is a mutual thing. We enjoy seeing the players. We enjoy rooting for our teams. And so we also have to consider those teams that are Republican donors, those teams that sponsored and have given your jersey money, your cable subscription money, your front row seat money, your last row seat money to a campaign or a politician which may not have your interest. So I think the NBA players can only do so much as we as the people support them do. Because even as we would have loved for them to walk out and stay off, the majority of people in the United States didn't walk out with them. So we understand that there's an economic aspect in which they have to take care of their lives, take care of their livelihood and their families. But what they can do is use their stature, use their power, use their cachet to hold the shoe companies accountable, saying, hey, if I sell $45,000 worth of shoes, can you match this? And we're going to pay for these children's education, which is in the cases what's happening with Donovan Mitchell. He's doing that. He's helping to pay for Jacob Blake's children's college fund. So you have a lot of players that do that, use their advertisement, use their sponsorships to bring money into the community. But I think the biggest thing right now with the voter registration, having polls that are, having places that are accessible, having training poll workers, having people in place where you can oversee. So one thing they can do is have the money and the resources. What we have to do is have the institutions in place that can help them and guide those resources as they come.
You know, I agree with you to some, you know, there are some, I would say we were going back and forth on this,
Yeah.
right? You know, one, the average NBA player, I don't care if you're the lowest player of them all, makes far more than the regular Black person in America. All right. Mm-hmm. So when it's talking about economic, like I got to feed my family food, they're making well over that. Right. Mm-hmm. So like, to me, to use that and require people who are living in abject poverty, particularly during this COVID-19 virus, that, and all they're losing their jobs, I think is totally unfair, right? And I think that far too long, we have often not held a lot of people in positions of power accountable. It is good that NBA players, are using their agency to a certain degree, right? Using their agency in order to do that. However, I think that part of this whole structure, right? Because professional athleticism is entertainment. It's the entertainment industry. Part of the structure was to not have another Muhammad Ali, another Colin Kaepernick, a James Brown, a Craig Hodges, and all these people that fundamentally challenged or, the core structure of what the NBA subsists on, and that is exploitation of labor. Right. And you know what I'm saying? So while it is good that they're using stadiums to have voting, and it's a step in the right direction, that is still not what I consider sustained or sustainable change. As well, we talked about this bubble that, a lot of the players live in. And this is let me tell you this, right? As knowing people who, are very focused about their career as an athlete and what it's required and what it takes to be an athlete, is also very similar to what it takes to be a scholar. It's like hours and hours and hours and hours of stressing out your body, right? To get to this position. I don't take that away, right? So I also have to acknowledge that for a long time, a lot of the players live in this bubble. So a lot of them are just getting politicized, or even maybe perhaps the courage in order to do such a thing. But I don't know about saying, well, it takes the people to do stuff too, as well. I think we all play a part. I don't know.
Right. Well, to your point, I think if we go back to even the civil rights struggle with Martin Luther King in the 60s, we have to look at what entertainers did and what we may know and not know. Because once again, in order to have agency, it has to have place and effectiveness. And if it's ostensibly against, it may not be effective. So there has to be some way to subterfuge how they use their resources. So for example, entertainers like Sammy Davis Jr. were donating to Martin Luther King and helping to get people out of jail whenever they need money. Harry Belafonte. A lot of these people, James Brown back in the day would hold concerts and use some of that money in the struggle. We may disagree with it, but at some point, how was it used? Was it used for relevant substances, or was it used for something frivolous? So I think in the same light where we are now with the amount of money, if it took Harry Belafonte 2 days to raise maybe $70,000, it won't take LeBron James 2 days to raise $70,000. So I think in terms of what they do and how their resources are used, no one's discounting the teacher or the mailman or the psychiatrist or the lawyer or the doctor or the person who works, at the grocery store. Mm-hmm. But what we're saying is, and people with fame and the resources they have, a lot is expected of them. And it's not just about always glitter, glam, and bling. There are some real athletes out there doing some real things in their communities that they may not want credit about. But where I say we lie as a community is, how do we have a centralized program so they know where to give the money to? Because as has been reported recently, Anthony Davis reported that, saying there's an interview that says that, if we don't see the changes, we won't play. So I think the players have a stance, but you have to allow this, I guess, from their perspective, they have to allow the system to work. A lot of these athletes, to your point, are new. but how many of us have included them in that conversation? Do all of us look at athletes as just athletes when they're going through the process of being a high school star, a college star, when they're being exploited on the AAU circuit? We only call on them when they get famous and they make money, but no one held their hand along the way. So we have to find a better way that we're in this stage. This is an opportunity now, because athletes are gonna keep growing and maturing and developing. So how are we gonna make them and help them grow politically conscious, aware of what the charges are as they go forward? There were some steps along the way, and I was a coach once. So I understand how the focus can be exclusively on sports, and we tend to not push them toward the politics of it. There are some anomalies like a Craig Hodges, like an Eton Thomas. There were some players before that had a voice, but they were anomalies in the system. But now we're seeing more. So I think it's a process. We're moving in the right direction, but we have to embrace this moment and say, what could we have done differently, or what opportunities do we have to engage each other and invite more people to this conscious conversation and this politically charged? And I think right now, you're gonna have more and more athletes doing that, as you see with the possibility of these top high school athletes going to HBCUs. Those are major factors and shifts that you see the NBA players can do. So if you're saying, hey, instead of going to over here, consider HBCU. So even beyond the economic aspect, it can be the push and plug to, instill greater talent and courage and energy in our HBCUs. So I don't think it's just limited to just finances. There's other things they're doing that may or may not be known,
right,
that may not need to be known because they may diminish their effectiveness.
Right. Okay. So this is me kind of pushing back, right? In terms of, you said, let the system work. How can you allow a system that is designed for the failure, of groups of people in order? That's how it works, right? So I don't know what you mean by that. So you're gonna have to explain that one to me, right?
So what I mean by that is they have come to an agreement in which a joint NBA, NBPA, which is the NBA Players Association statement,
right,
discussing what are the expectations. And can I read a little bit from it? I have some notes. So
yeah.
June 29th, the Atlanta Hawks announced that the State Farm Arena will be used for early voting for the Georgia general primary runoff between July 20th through August 11th. It will be used for the general election on November 3rd as well. The Detroit Pistons announced that their practice facility, the Henry Ford Pistons Performance Center, will serve as polling places. Initially, they announced other initiatives, including voter registration page on Pistons.com and live voter registration events at the practice facility. Other organizations like the Sacramento Kings, the Charlotte Hornets, the Washington Wizards, Houston Rockets, of course, the Los Angeles Lakers, Steve Ballmer with the Clippers, the Knicks. So all the teams are pledging to use their arenas as places where you can either drop off votes or vote or register to vote, which is helpful especially given this time we're having, mailboxes disappear by osmosis all of a sudden, and we're complicating the process.
So my question is, I don't understand what NBA player paid for any of that. That is a tax write-off with the people who own the arenas. That has nothing to do with the actual players. Now, I might be wrong with that.
Right.
But
that's a start. Is it better to not have them?
Wait a minute. Hold on for a minute. No, because we need to move away from symbolic gestures of freedom and liberation. And so quite often we do these symbolic gestures and then nothing gets done, which goes back to my question is that how do professional athletes move towards sustainable action, right? And so, yeah, it's a step in the right direction, but my thing is it's a one-day event, right? And in the whole, to me, in the landscape of the political atmosphere is that how does that directly impact Black people? Like that is something that all people benefit, but how does that directly impact and fuels into Black people's current conditions of economic issues, health care, and so on and so forth, right? But I mean, I'm not saying this, and this is the thing. You can be critical of, you can support something and be critical of it. I'm not saying I don't support it, right?
Right.
But I'm just saying, like, okay, so sustainably, what is this looking like, right? You know what I'm saying? So it's like, we're going to give you little voting places. Now you go back and play. I think, you see what I'm saying? Because I think even part of also the frustration of the players that they're feeling is that they're not their own folk in decision making. That somebody has a contract over them and essentially is like, shut up and dribble or kick.
It depends on your angle, and depend on your angle of it. It could be that conceivably, but if you're in the middle of it, it could be like judo. You use that against that person. You use that power, that position as leverage. And I think depending on your angle, depending on where you are in this, it looks differently. So I think for you, your concept of where you want it to be is going to look different from somebody else who said, oh, this is great. I have access to voting. I have access where I can go register right here. It's in my community. I maybe can have shuttle transportation. There's, like I said, there are many things we don't know about how that money is being used, where it's being used, what organizations are being used to pay for salaries for people to do things such as transportation, such as registration, poll workers. So there's an agenda in place. But what I'm saying is, while your expectations may be greater for some other people, for 5 other people, this is what they need, and this is a cure. And we can hold them accountable by saying, okay, what's next? And so my thing is, what can we really expect them to do? To stop playing basketball and run for office? Because once again, if they stop playing, that's going to hurt the owners. One, now let's understand this too.
So I really don't give.
Let me also say this too. By them wearing T-shirts and saying Black Lives Matter, they're also hurting the owners, because you have a lot of the white fan base that doesn't want to hear that thinks they should just shut up and dribble. They're canceling subscriptions, they're burning jerseys, they're not buying shoes. So the owners are going to get hit economically by Black people just saying Breonna Taylor, saying Black Lives Matter. The fact that that's stenciled on the court right now, they've lost some fans. If they don't acquiesce to some of the stipulations by the NBA players, the players contend that they will walk out.
Right. I disagree that in the era, in a Trump era, who just doled out trillions of dollars to major corporations, I'm pretty sure these franchise owners were a part of it. They are not hurting. Let's be quite clear. They're making a lot of money. So like that ideology of like this kind of like that's what I'm talking about. Sustainable also means kind of structural, as well. The owners are going to, so what I'm saying is that the owners are going to be all right. Okay. The owners are going to be all right. If it shuts down, that's not going to be an issue. Now, those who work for the organizations, that's a whole other story. Also, you said, to ask somebody greater. Now, in my understanding of, let's take like a Jackie Robinson, think about Chadwick Boseman playing Jackie Robinson. These type of athletes, it was rolled into who you were as an athlete to represent and move for community. Somewhere around the Jordan era, and I'm not saying it's specifically Jordan, but when money and the athlete becomes, or sports becomes a multi-billion-dollar industry or more, it becomes individualized. And there is somehow over the years, there is no type of responsibility, because even though you weren't on the court with the person, working out, it is understood that the community made you. Right. So like and even me, even me, like my PhD is, I will never say I earned that PhD by myself. My community made me and pushed me, So Right. So it was already baked into an understanding that, you know, if this wasn't just an individual soul thing. So I think maybe perhaps moving back to that understanding is what they're doing. And I mean, I don't, you know, I'm really just kind of interested in, like, you know, where does this go?
Okay, so can I add something?
Mm-hmm.
So let's take, for example, when you ask where can this go, I have to
Mm-hmm.
argue that, okay, we have to look at what are the sustainable institutions we have in our community that are ready to accept the agency. So apart from that, let's take LeBron James and his sponsorship of the I Promise School. When you ask what's sustainable, education sustainable, opportunities to help broaden kids' academic, social and emotional development is sustainable. David Robinson also founded the Carver Academy in Texas. Now, the demographics, I don't know, but you ask NBA players. Jalen Rose founded the Jalen Rose Leadership Academy. And once again, I mentioned Donovan Mitchell. So athletes opening up academic centers and being an active part of moving that needle and how we're learning and what we learn are important. But is that kind of energy, program, or pedagogical approach consistent across our communities? So therein lies the challenge that we have to come across now. If we expect the athletes to have a greater responsibility, we need to make sure we have, okay, what are our academic politics? What are economic politics? What are our social politics? So that we know, okay, this is what we're building. But I don't know that as a community that we can say, hey, this is the direction we're going. So, but what we can look at are the athletes that are giving back. And I think a lot of athletes do a lot. So even when I was officiating, what I would see is a lot of the athletes sponsoring youth, males, girls teams, and putting them in tournaments. These are healthy opportunities to get kids out of their community, to help them to see the world, to help them to travel and be exposed to coaches that maybe can use athletics as a vehicle to change their circumstances. So once again, we may not know and see, oh, this fits exactly into what I see as sustainable or whatever. But what I think I've seen personally, athletes do make an impact, but we have to engage and figure out, okay, what are you doing that maybe can be placed on a broad scale, or looking at, hey, how do these resources or how our connections merge so we can have a healthier marriage? And I think there are athletes that are doing that, but we have to have an open perspective to say, okay, let me look at it like this. And I think that may be the challenge. There's a lot of work being done, but it's so many agendas in different places. And it's not focused for right now. If he says I have $300,000, where's this going to go? And so we have to have the places, the institutions in place, I believe, to say, okay, this is our agenda academically, politically, socially.
Right. Well, the thing is that we don't have the institutions in place, and it takes money and political power to put the institutions in place. So this is kind of like a chicken and an egg argument.
Right.
And then
they got the money though.
So hold up for a minute. Holla. But this is the thing. Yeah, they got player money, but they ain't got franchise owner money. Let's be clear. And also they don't have franchise owner connections of getting tax write-offs and opportunity zones and all the other things that come with it. So that's my position is that yes, there are some rich brothers and sisters, but majority brothers, because there's a gender pay gap in terms of professional athleticism, but they ain't wealthy. It is not 4-5 generations down type of money. And as well, what is wealth when majority of the people who you come from are poor? And I'm talking about under poverty, right? So that's another thing that we can, you know what I'm saying, we have to consider. And so I wish this is her name, the managing editor, Dr. Rolanda Spencer, worked in the nonprofit sector. And she was saying that, a lot of players in their efforts because, a lot of players come with family, right? And they support multiple people. And for a very long time, this is also with artists, people in the entertainment industry, they establish these nonprofit centers, educational centers, programs, and things like that, in order to kind of have like a stream of income for their family members. And they often fail because they're mismanaged. These are not people who run in nonprofits. So I hope that, you know, that aspect is definitely taken care of. Yeah. This is something I think is just so critical. I often think about, who do these brothers and sisters engage in conversation and dialogue, right? And you know, consistently. And I'm not talking about, oh yeah, let me call up, and this is no stab, Mark Lamont Hill and Eric Dyson, and you know what I'm saying? Like, there's a whole slew of activists, workers, artists, thinkers, intellectuals, blah, 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 that they could tap into. And I often wonder, who do they tap into? Because of this kind of like, in my opinion, kind of like this film or this thing between those on that side and us who are, you know, the working poor, or whatever you want to call this. Yeah. So
you know, I think that's a stratified answer, because there's so many things that go into that. So if you're LeBron James and Chris Paul, you could call Barack Obama.
That don't mean Barack Obama. I mean, look, and this is no shade. This is no shade. Hold up for a minute. I just talked about this hierarchy. Like, Obama told them, shut up and dribble in a nice way.
Okay, but let me finish. Because once again, everything's a hierarchy. So let's look at it. So if you are LeBron James, Chris Paul, you can call up Barack Obama. Okay. If you are someone who grew up in a community where this wasn't on your horizon, you know, let's be honest. Right now, it wasn't on anyone's horizon 2 months ago. 2 years ago. So it's making a lot of people
what wasn't on anybody's horizon?
It's making a lot of people having a hard time making this U-turn on this freeway, because they thought that this illusion was going to last. So I think what's happening now, some people are talking through the internet. Social media is a great influence on some people. You probably have another layer of athletes who had significant male role models like coaches in their lives, who are solid conveyors of information that have a sound based on the historical and cultural pulse of the community and the nation. And then you have some that are just trying to figure it out now. And you have some that don't care. It's just like our real world. So I think
I'm trying to understand, how does Barack Obama play an important factor in real on the ground work?
Well, I think, once again, I can't speak because I don't know behind the scene, but I can only imagine it's leveraging your resources. It's leveraging connections.
But what is he leveraging with real on the ground work?
But it's not, that's the thing about that connection. This link in the chain may not connect with the 41st link, but they're relevant. They have to connect. And I think that's where we are now. We have to connect in different sectors of our being, whether it's politics you don't necessarily agree with, but we have to move in the right direction. We may not agree, but are we going in the right direction? It may be in an athletic capacity and different layers of that. We have to connect in different aspects, and where connections lie may not necessarily be with your necessarily immediate connections. But at one point, this chain will be strong. And I think that's what we're working through right now. We have to be able to allow different connections to play out.
I'm trying to figure out. Yeah, I'm honing in on Barack Obama. Because no. You know what? Let me tell you. I'm honing in. I'm honing in on how people name drop Barack Obama as if dropping his name automatically generates solutions and resources. It does not. Let's keep it a buck, as they say. Let's keep it 100. while he was in office, there isn't anything long lasting that is directly tied to the health of the Black community. So that's why I'm like, Barack Obama. Come on now, let's be honest. So how could somebody who said, even though the Black community largely voted for you and rallied for you, say, well, you know what, this is, I am a president of all Americans and not just, Black people. Well, we know that, right? And then say, okay, well, if you really want something, you need to push, right? Mm-hmm. And then after presidency, he is the person that you tap to talk about the Black Lives Matter movement and issues in the Black community when he didn't essentially do much. Like Black people they weren't popping when Barack Obama left, like in the pockets, let's be honest, in facing policing.
I think, and once again, I think the name appeals. We don't have 300 million of you. We have one of you. Right. And there may be 20 million people who hear that name, and that is a magnet to the cause. So if this is the theory, and I'm speaking in the middle, I'm trying to look objectively at both sides, right? Because we have to have a perspective that's just not, no. Some part gotta be, this is the cart that we need. And if it means bodies are coming to the table, now, when everybody's at the table, how do we have a civil conversation to say, this is what we need, this is where we're going? And we haven't come to that point yet. We haven't come to some form of consensus. And it doesn't necessarily mean agreement. It doesn't necessarily mean liking, but in the way we are now, when there's no consensus among us, we're going to disagree on everything. At some point, we got to say, okay, where are we now with this? We have to take an inventory of this. And for some, Barack Obama brings in people. For other people, he doesn't. But that doesn't mean... I'm not
talking about bringing in people. I'm talking about implementing solutions. That's what you know what I mean? Like
because the solution is not just to one aspect. It takes the fans, it takes the organizations, it takes the athletes. If our politicians have not made change and they're elected officials, what are you expecting of people who hit balls and dunk balls to do? We have elected officials, congressmen, senators, aldermen, and that have not done a thing.
You just did professional athletes.
I'm saying objectively, they're not elected politicians.
Right.
And the thing about it, the businesses that the things they do in the community may or may not be good enough for some, and it's not enough for others. But the politicians who put businesses on the block, who sign laws, who vote on laws.
Politicians do not put businesses on the block, but go ahead.
Well, if you go to,
that's the problem. No, that's the problem. I'm talking about as a,
if we had politicians that was putting businesses on the block, then maybe the athletes, let me invest in this community. And maybe there are some that are doing that.
I don't know about that line of thought.
We don't know because it's not being done. We don't have the organization in place to say, hey, has anyone ever approached them and say, name me one governor that said, hey man, we got this block we're trying to develop. Well, watch y'all go in on this.
Right.
We're not doing that.
Right. Well,
now there may be some athletes that buy small plots of land in communities, in small places, in different parts of the nation. They're big into real estate, yeah. But in terms of with this new government block, the redevelopment grants that was going on under this administration,
opportunity zones.
Did we really get into that?
Charlemagne the God, T.I. did. So they say. But
of course, Killer Mike has an initiative. So the thing now is, if we have, and that's where it is. How do athletes connect with the next level of money, and how does that next level of money connect with the intellectual class of our base? And how does that base connect with the other type of money in our community? Because it's not just them.
Well, I think the problem is that there is
effort.
so this is the thing. There is no money flowing through the community. That's like one of the biggest issues, right? There's such an economic dearth in our community that that's one issue. Now, in terms of as an elected public official, there are responsibilities that that you have that we both agree politicians are not doing. But still, my question remains is that how do we move out of being highly, or how in these upper echelons of circles talking about creating change, and what does it look like for just the every average person that's trying to move through this, right? So
athletics, from the athletic perspective, or just on a regular 9 to 5?
Right. So I'm responding to you talking about solutions and bringing people together, and we need to put this structure together and all this other stuff. And I'm like, okay, so right now we're talking about athletes who make millions of dollars and congressional people who are in positions of power, right? Well, what does that look like? Like, how do we do that on, outside of that, right?
Okay, so let me ask you this. So when there were 8 years of presidency of Obama, what was the political agenda that was developed outside of Obama? What agenda was developed and then beings trained to put forth that agenda and then run for the specified offices in selected places? We didn't develop or train anybody to follow up on what we want. We want the people who are already there, who've been there doing their things, to do what we want them to do. And that's not going to work.
So let me tell you, there's been, I think it's very unfair because people be like, oh, there's no agenda. There's been multiple iterations of what an agenda looks like. Let's be clear, right? Particularly in the Obama administration, I think there were two kind of clashing sides. There was one that said, just let this, first Black president of the United States, have a presidency that is not a lot of drama. And then the other side is saying that, we need to hold his feet to the fire and hold him more accountable. And I think that as a result of those two clashes, right, whatever agendas have been created weren't even remotely addressed in the way in which it should, right? I mean, there's just been so many iterations and things, put out.
But see, I view that as programmatic thinking. I don't think, how you articulate that just means that people are still programmed to think, oh, vote for this because it's the lesser of two evils, or just go ahead and elect him because he's the first Black president. While it feels good to say he's the first Black president, we still want someone who's going to be capable to serve humanity and acknowledge our Blackness. And I think even expanding beyond just saying we're solely on the victimization of Blackness, I'm proud to be Black, but beyond all of that, good human beings.
But historically, Black people have voted Democrat. And
so those and that's a program. That's a program.
So
And when you say agendas, I think sometimes we're conflating. We use synonyms, and sometimes they are, while they mean the same, they're applied differently.
What's your definition? I don't understand.
Now, for example, I think when I say program, I think when I say the program, I don't think you have to think. Whereas I think if you have an agenda, this is something that you created on your own. A program you can kind of follow. You can follow a program. If I put something in a computer, it's gonna run. But if I come to a meeting of the minds with people and say, this is on our agenda, this is what we're gonna do, and these are the things we're gonna get accomplished. Now we can, I'm not selling that to anybody. I'm not saying, hey, you're gonna buy this, but this is my perspective. When I look at it, if you're telling me this movie and you're telling me these words, this is what I'm hearing. Now somebody else is gonna hear something different, and that's fair, but I'm not gonna reject or undermine how I hear that, and especially, I'm not buying it either way. So I think what didn't get done was something that didn't reflect Republican or Democrat. What we still have is the same old, and we're still saying the same old thing we said 4 years ago, 8 years ago, 12 years ago, 16 years ago. I haven't heard anything new since Reagan, since the two Bushes, since the Clintons. It's the same arguments.
You lost me. I don't know where you went. But
Because
let me kind of bring it back to, us talking about professional athletes, right? And their contributions in this moment. Now, in all the things that have happened, what do you think are some highly effective things that can be done or that they can do in order to continue to move forward?
I think that's going to look, idealistically, we can say, it'd be great if they formed their own leagues. It'd be great if they had their own apparel to control the economic machine and control the capital. But at the end of the day, everyone's perspective is going to be different. To say that, the voting, to say that they're creating opportunities for people who don't have access to vote, I think that's positive. I think it's saying, okay, if you don't realize some of our demands, we will sit out. That's positive. I think them articulating and donating in the way that they're doing individually, collectively, is positive. But until there's something there that we can say this is going to, then everyone's going to have a different opinion. It's going to be enough for some, it's going to be not enough for others. And I think for me, what I'm seeing, especially coming from the 80s and 90s, we never saw this type of activism, and to see where they are now, it bodes hope for the future that there's a greater awareness politically, economically of their power, which hopefully transcends, okay, how do they impact the next generation of athletes? So the impact may not be right now to everybody's expectations, but what things are being done behind the scene could impact the next generation of athletes and impact the decisions in the schools they go to, whether they go to the Dukes and Kentuckys, or if they start looking at the Howards and the Southerns and the FAMUs and the Gramblin's for education. But right now, if they are donating their energy, their focus, obviously what they've done hasn't forced, them to do anything further with Breonna Taylor's case. So what more can we ask of them?
We could ask a lot more. To say that we've asked you enough is counterintuitive in the antithesis of struggle and movement. But I have a question though. Do you think, or no, let me reframe that. What does professional sports look like on the other side of this? What do you think it's going to look like?
Who knows? There are too many factors at play. You got the pandemic issue. You got people, it's a catch-22 because for some athletes, what they've done won't be enough. For some, it will be enough. You got to question the economic ability, the financial capacity of fans to continue to patronize.
Mikhail,
but I don't know.
What does it look like? What would you like for it to look? What is your imagination as a fan, as somebody who is an officiant? Official. Like what? Right? If we're in such an uncertain space, mm-hmm. and people are reimagining and reconstructing everything, what does professional sports look like for you? Or how would you like for it to look? For me, I would like it to be more ownership for the players, right? I think that's very critical. I also do agree in terms of there needs to be a more kind of how do I want to say this? In terms of college sports, there needs to be, a more distribution of key players at institutions like UCLA, where at 1 year the majority of the Black males that came in were on the football team. We cannot have that, right? So what does that look like for you? Like, have you ever in your experience said, man, I think that it needs to be this way?
I really don't, because I like sports, but I'm really indifferent about it now, honestly. I really don't care. I watch, but I don't care. I don't have I think there are greater issues for me right now. And I look at sports, but I don't see it as, okay, if sports were to stop, I'd be all right. I'd be okay. So for me, I personally,
So I have a question. What is it about? I know there's a lot that has happened, but it seems like you were turned off prior to leading up to this. What is it about professional sports that you started, because my father is like that. My father, was almost drafted as a professional football player. And he's like, I don't even look at football. I'm like, I'm good.
I don't know. I think I like looking at sunsets. I don't think you have to have a problem with something to not engage or have that passion.
Right.
Don't get me wrong. But I'm not as invested. Am I a lifelong Laker Dodger fan? Of course. But, at some point you just get to see there are other things in life that you want to explore. And I don't think it's a rejection or any animus. It's just, hey, you grow. But what I observed for this, I think, once again, from a political standpoint, this is fascinating. And honestly, we're all over. And until we get to some consensus as a people and say, as a community, to say, this is what this is what our pot is like. It's a lot. This is a communal effort. I personally, when you ask me, my position is this on the board. It's a communal effort. We got to support each other. We can talk about, we can be tough love, but we got to find a way to say, okay, what can we use out of this, and how can we shape this to get you to understand this is the real cause? And meet people, as in education, you have to meet people where they are and lift them up. And if we're getting athletes that are finally recognizing and doing something, this didn't happen in the 90s. This didn't happen in the 80s. So this is way better than where we are. And now that we're here, we have to embrace and hopefully say, we have this moment now. This is where we need to go with it. And
I would say, and do not rely on Michael Jordan or Barack Obama to give you that solution. It can, it can be hold on for a minute. It can be a great conversation, but you have a franchise owner and you have former president of the United States, where there's a lot of criticisms around it in terms of the state of Black people when it ended. These are maybe great conversations, but
but realize he's one owner. Now we can disagree with Michael Jordan's politics all we want to, but that is a task when you're the only owner. There's only so much. They love Michael Jordan for what he did, but he's still Michael Jordan. Now, was he involved in some of the I think, but once again, how these people are navigating their newfound consciousness and awareness.
And so what I'm saying is that he's not the one to usher them through.
But you know what?
I'm sorry.
He never did this before.
This is the thing. I'm not saying that I said he makes a great conversation. Yeah. I don't think they should expect him to bring them into consciousness.
Right. No doubt. But we're not saying that. But I think, having him included, hopefully, like I said, I think once again, the shift is important. If we're getting people to shift, we can get the movement to go forward. And I think that's the biggest thing, the shift.
So I have a question. Is he the only owner that said he would have a conversation, or is it because he is the only Black owner that he's talking to them? And if he is if he's the token that's being sent to talk to them, is he just the Trojan horse to get them to play again under the same conditions and labor agreements? You have what?
You know what? But you know what? That is fascinating that you say that. Do you know that picture with the Cleveland Summit?
Mm-mm.
You know that iconic picture where they have Muhammad Ali sitting with Bill Russell, Jim Brown, Lou Alcindor. This was when Muhammad Ali refused to go to the war.
Okay.
And so there's this picture with all, and if you Google, it's called the Cleveland Summit. All the powerful, people, athletes at the time. And so the image people look at, people were there to support Muhammad Ali, right? But the story behind the scenes was there was this promoter who offered all these athletes, and the back row had 5 football players, offered all these athletes an opportunity to make some money off Muhammad Ali, because they had the opportunity to get him off of his prison time. It was like, look, if you go fight these amateur bouts or these demos in Vietnam, you ain't got to go to jail. And they were going to live stream them and give everybody a cut off of it. So they went there to talk Muhammad Ali into going to fight so they can make some money and stay out of jail. So to your point, what looks like they're supporting him could actually be people in the back massaging him to do something else. So do we know that Michael Jordan and Barack Obama are doing what they're doing for the advancement? We don't know yet. Because once again, if the players don't see results that they want, then they say they're going to act. So we have to, once again, when I say let the process play out, we only know the agreements that the players have to see what their next move is going to be.
And I say, don't allow the process to play out. Keep the pressure.
Okay.
I say keep the pressure, because accountability, if we're talking about true accountability, which is what the players, in my opinion, were doing in terms of walking out, is holding people accountable for their actions and making a stance for racial justice and equality, then I mean, yeah.
So what if the compromise was finish the season and we'll use the arenas? But what if the compromise was not, okay, if you walk out, we're not using the arenas?
We use so finish the season, and then for this one day of voting, we're going to use the arenas.
No, not just one day. In some instances, it's not one day. Some instances, it's a 2-week period. Okay.
Oh, wow, that's dynamic.
It's better than nothing, especially when stuff is getting
Why do we have to have this better than nothing idea or ideals better than nothing?
That's what people are saying nowadays.
Well, I want to, yeah. I'm really curious, like, why are we still doing this better than nothing? Like,
that's what I still wonder that. I question that too. It's the popular term right now. It's better than nothing.
Better than nothing.
Better than nothing.
Damn.
Now.
That's all we are work. We are better than nothing people. Well, it's better today.
That's what we say nowadays.
You got some corn chips. Be happy.
For real, corn chips is better than air chips. It's better than eating air for dinner.
Yeah, well, I would say that is like totally counterintuitive. If people really talking about like what it is to shift and change.
Yeah.
And you ask for, you ask for a car and they give you a steering wheel. They're like, hey, it's better than nothing.
Hey, you can drive the air, turn the air, huh?
Yeah, drive. Yeah.
Imagination drives creativity.
Hey.
I mean, but I don't know. I think we have to look at it differently, because we look at this. We've been looking at this structure and this politics of what we've been going through. We've been looking at this. Mm-hmm. Some people haven't looked at it from this angle like we have. Mm-hmm. And so once again, you have to allow people the time to say, okay, now you're realizing where you are. Okay, people have to be oriented, and people have to feel confident and understand, okay, yeah, it's okay for me to say this. It's okay for me. And I think there are a lot of brothers out there, they've never done this before.
Right. No, I agree.
And so it's only, and I think this is, we haven't had, once again, I'm using this as an example. We have the Barack Obama out there, but what other aspect of Black maleness has been represented over the last 15 years?
Well, I think
these young men can look up to.
Right. So I think the issue, well, this goes back to what I was talking about. Symbolic leadership and symbolic gestures do not do anything in terms of change, in terms of implementing institutions. We had 8 years of symbolic Black leadership that did not translate into actual shift and change for Black folk. It actually got worse for a lot of Black people during the Barack Obama administration, right? So, and this is, of course, this is not, this is under his administration. There's a lot of things that go on under his administration.
Exactly.
But we must be 100% honest that this happened during his administration. And it wasn't like for 8 years, we were, the only thing that was going on where people were like, oh man, the Roots are performing at the White House. Commons at the White House.
We do have to take into account that he was, facing the Mitch McConnell, John Boehner, and the no dudes. So, he has to work in conjunction with the Senate and the House.
Hold on for a minute, but there was a majority Democratic Senate and House at one point. Come on now. And the reason, and when he first got elected.
Okay.
What was it?
And I said at one point. I didn't say what point, but once again.
What was it when he first got elected? Or I think it was when he first got elected, right? Yeah. I believe it's when he first got elected. So, right.
But
so
you have the speaker saying we're going to make sure you're a one-term president. There was a lot of animus. Now, once again, when you just look at if I just drop down from Mars to Earth, I'm like, dude, y'all gonna tell this dude no? Y'all just ain't gonna do nothing, everything no?
But there was a point where there was a Democratic majority Senate and House while he was elected. A lot of stuff did not get done. And so people were like, shh, don't criticize. He's the first Black president. Just go ahead and have fun at those White House parties. Everything is going to be good. No, I'm serious, yo. And I'm saying that because a lot of people, what people don't want to admit, people will be like, oh, there was no scandal, in the White House administration, during his thing. And I was like, yeah, it might not have been in the White House, but the scandal was out in them streets when the hustle went dead for a lot of people. So that's why, I would go back and forth with my parents, and I was like, psychologically, it's a beautiful thing. Symbolically, it's a wonderful thing, to see somebody who looks like one of our cousins, in office. But what has it actually done? And we need to move away from this. It's so disastrous to us. You know what I'm saying? Look where we are. We can't even make money off our culture. Okay.
But I hear that, and I hear that, but my perspective of that is we slept though. We celebrated for 8 years and thought that was it. And I thought there were some people that made some very good moves. But collectively, there were some people that made some dope moves. But collectively, I can get into the personal stories, but that's not the place for that. But I think there were people from a business standpoint that pursued their dreams, that took the opportunity to capitalize on whatever programs were available and say, okay, this is what I'm going to do right now. But as a community, as a base, I don't know that we took advantage of, if we're waiting for one man to cure our problems, then I think that was the problem. We were looking for him as the savior instead of using him as a resource to get done what we need to get done.
Well, that's very interesting because that's what I said earlier, is that there were these two factions. So there was one faction that said, all that. He's one man. What is he going to do? Do stuff for the Black community? Like all that rhetoric that Obama did. And then there was actually people saying that there needs to be much more that is done. And there was a split. But I also want to say, I mean, honestly, Obama is great Black history, but it's Black history, right?
No.
You know what I'm saying? It is Black history. But moving forward, that same idea of he's only one man, right? I kind of, and what is it that he can do is what I fear in terms of moving into these elections. The expectation is that we just vote or that we just support without questioning, right? And so trust in this person, this one man, and give us the vote.
You know what? But I think to your point, you know, when you've run 100 miles and now you at when you got to run 100 miles and you're at the 95th mile, are you really going to go back? You got to finish. And this is where we are. I mean, this is the reality. We can sit here and bitch and moan and say whatever we don't like and use our, you know.
I don't understand how critical analysis becomes bitch and moan.
No, but because this is what we're left with. This, for real, this is what we're left with. There is no other option right now, unless I'm sleeping on something. But these are the facts.
Right. That is the kind of language and philosophy that you're using is the reason why we are sitting here and talking in circles. That is because thus far, in a lot of ways, you have excused athletes, you have excused Black leadership, you have excused all these people about, hey, there's only so much that they can do. All right, so why in the fuck are they in leadership positions if they can't do what it is that it needs to be done? There's a lot of other communities where shit gets done. Why can't we put pressure on them to get shit done?
Okay, so I don't know that I've excused them. I just look at it objectively. What can they do? They're not governors or mayors. What do you want them to do that they're not doing? What does that look like to you? Because my perspective, once again, I'm just looking at what's being done. This is what's being done that they do for other people that you may not know. You don't like that. That's cool. So what do you think they need to do that proves they're leaders? Because I don't think athletes are leaders. That's
I wasn't just talking about. Well, I don't. Well, that is one of the issues. I think we agree on something. I don't think athletes are leaders.
So what can we expect them to lead? Right. So I don't think they're leaders.
Right. So I don't think they're leaders. I never said that they were leaders. I said Black leadership, but that didn't mean that I was talking about Black athletes. I think that, however, I do think that professional athletes do have a responsibility. One, it's based there. They are in an industry which they feed off of fans. They wouldn't be nothing if people didn't come to their games. You know what I'm saying? They are created and cultivated by a community. So they have a responsibility and accountability to the communities in which they come from, right? Leadership, I don't know about that. I don't agree with that, which to me is the issue, which goes back to, I'm like, well, who do these people actually really talk to, right? Because leadership is cultivated and it's cured over time, right? It is in conversation with other people that are working on, how do we move these agenda forward, in my opinion, right? But
okay, so let me ask you this. So who in the community do you think they should be talking to?
Very good question. So I think that they should be talking to people who are on the ground, who might not have the resources, but they understand what the solutions are. They need to be talking to people who have been studying this, who have been researching this and the dynamics in terms of how to move forward outside of these upper echelon academic houses, right?
Right. But my question is this, because how do we know that they're not? And
right. That's why I asked the question. I don't know who they're talking to. I said, who are they talking to?
Because
the reason why I'm asking who are they talking to, because I do have a criticism about what's being done. Like, who are they talking to? Who's telling them? You know what I'm saying? Well, I mean, I know some people, told them that getting this is worth going back to playing. And I'm like, well, who told him that? Like,
Okay.
I don't know if that was necessarily.
So back to the other point you said. So while, like I said, I don't call myself excusing athletes. What I do is understand what they've done. So when you say the responsibilities to communities, I reflected that they do this by sponsoring Black men, Black young boys, and helping them travel and expose them to academic and athletic opportunities. There are a lot of athletes that have done this that I noticed when I was a basketball official. I noticed this, and it's something like, okay, this is great. I didn't know they did this. Whether it's shoes, whether it's clothing, there are some things that they do that the NCAA may find impermissible, but they do what they got to do. You got players that have started schools. You got players that help in real estate. So once again, there are pockets of people doing things. Now, collectively, what they're going to do, I don't know. But I don't think me giving someone time to become aware is accommodating or apologizing. It's saying, hey, you know what? It's about time you wake up. Now, let's see where you go with this. But what's in our community says, because if you can't say that, okay, yeah, they should go talk to Michael Eric Dyson or Cornel West or Dr. Eddie Glaude, or like some people do, Harry Edwards is probably one of the people they probably do consult, but there are people they consult behind the scenes because once again, a lot of athletes come from different perspectives, whether it was the Craig Hodges that's involved, whether it was Eton Thomas. So there were athletes, even if you go back to Chris Jackson with Mahmoud Abdul Rauf. I don't know if you remember him from the 90s, but he was the first one. So he was the first protest. He led the protest. He's way back.
For the NBA.
So there are people they can draw from, but once again, where their voices are being used, I think sometimes it's more important to not know and not broadcast it, because it will undermine the effectiveness of how they can move and where they can move. But once again, there are people behind the scenes who have gone through these things that, a sports analyst, psychiatrist. I think Dr. Harry Edwards is probably Harry Edwards is one of the biggest ones.
Well, the difference between the civil rights era and now is that the civil rights, by far, when people do studies, it was such a well-constructed machine, right? That there hasn't been anything that necessarily duplicated it since, or even prior to. So those who donated and gave, they were essentially giving into an institution, right? So while it is good that there are people who it's not that I'm saying that you have to be 100% transparent about how you do help, but I think that in the ways in which you help, where the community can benefit when they see and know what you're doing, are critical. And it must be more than buying shoes, taking a person out of the hood so they could see the world, which is problematic in itself, not build up your community, is cool, but it's very narrow, because it actually, in my opinion, encourages one to continue to believe and filter or funnel this energy into an exploitative professional athletic system, right? But as an athlete, now as a college athlete and as an athlete my whole life, sports is excellent. I'm not saying just sports. I love sports, as a matter of fact. It does a lot of great things. Traditionally, it is playing sports is part of literally the culture, right? But I don't know. I'm just in constant kind of like thought in terms of these moments, how do we move effectively and best, and what is a healthy way of holding folk accountable, right? So I think, I think we're on, two opposite ends of what that looks like, but I think it's really good. I think this is really good discussion.
Yeah, I mean, I think once again, it's, if you mention fans, but why the fans got to go? I mean, we say that with the players' responsibility, where they play for the fans, why the fans got to buy the jerseys?
Well, are you talking about the fans that can afford the tickets? Because most of the people that go to these games don't look like us.
Well, once again, there are two sides to this. Once again, because they say Black Lives Matter, they're going to lose. And I'm just addressing your point. Because they said Black Lives Matter, they're going to lose white fans. If they don't say Black Lives Matter, those fans are going to come back and they're going to lose Black fans. And they're going to lose the credibility in the community and they're going to face scrutiny. So once again, everyone stands to lose something out of this. The whole point of this is right now is, okay, what can we gain out of this? You know, and if they're taking money, they're taking a hit because, okay, white people burning jerseys or whatever, it's one thing. But, you know, it's kind of it's a catch-22 because, you know, everyone has a different perspective. And I'm not the Players Association president. I'm not their attorney or their agent. And for me, as I watch this movie, it's interesting to see how it plays out because once again, when I was a high basketball fan, none of this was happening. And there's a lot of stuff that's happened in the 80s and the 90s that warranted a walkout, you know? But now we're at this point and we see how the players have been vociferous in their articulation, using the social media. They're asking demands of the owners. I think those are nominal steps that are productive. Is it the perfect answer? No. And at the risk of whatever, but if they didn't do anything, if they really didn't do any of this, they'd really be up Schitt's Creek. So it's a matter of now, okay, if it's a fact that they're playing in their product of their community, what's next? Maybe a different expectations of our academic institutions of higher learning. How can they be prepared? But once again, we're asking a lot for right now when we don't have the situation in place, and we're asking young men to do stuff that they don't know nothing about. That you admittedly said that there is no leadership to guide them there. And so if they're figuring it out, it's not a point to throw stones. It's a point to say, okay, hey, how can we do this? I know. You know what? Who can engage them?
Asking somebody a lot, I think, is a cop-out statement. I mean, you could ask somebody and they can either say yes or no.
Okay, but like that. I said, the term "a lot" is relative to, I don't know what, because I really don't know what other people expect of them. That's what I still don't know what people expect of them. Mm-hmm. I don't know what, you know, when I think that, okay, you're helping to pay for a child's education and that's not good enough. Okay, that's not good enough for some people. You're helping young people maybe explore their dreams that nobody else is doing, and that may not be good enough. Okay, that may not be.
I think honestly, what you're doing is that you are individualizing something that we're talking about, something grand. There has been people who don't have an MBA salary that has funneled people's education. That's not anything grand and fantastic, right? I mean, come on now. I mean, so what? But
you're just asking what they do.
Hold on for a minute. So us asking or requiring people to do stuff, and by you saying, well, you're asking a lot and not requiring and asking people to do things and expect that they do it, I think is the reason why we are exactly in this position right now, is that we don't require people to do it. Right? They think it's optional, or they think they can throw a couple of dollars or do whatever. And okay, you know, they'll be fine. They'll vote for us. Oh, don't worry about it. So I think part and parcel of this conversation and the paradigm shift is that we have got to rethink and move in another way that doesn't make this as, well, this is a voluntary moment. I don't have to do it. Is that I'm doing this because this is part of my actual survival. And this is actually what it is.
Okay, so that still doesn't answer the question. Once again, that's to say that people helping their community.
What's the question? What's the question?
The people not helping their community is not an answer. That's kind of disingenuous. But like I said,
I didn't say that. But I didn't say that. This is what I heard. This is what I heard. This is what I heard. No, this is what I heard. I heard that just because people are throwing out a few dollars here and there, that's not enough. I didn't say that.
And what I don't understand, throwing out a few dollars here and there is asking too much. So I'm trying to figure out, how do people who are in need, these people actually are serving? How is that not being productive? And I'm not saying it's the highest.
I didn't say anything about not being productive.
But what
I'm saying is that how can you? My thing is the point that I was making is, you have. Let's take it to the beginning of the discussion. I said basketball players, professional athletes, by far more specifically males than female athletes, make much more than the average Black person in America right now. So if the average Black person in America is helping to get a kid go through school that is not of their loins or of their pum pum, why is it also that an athlete is doing it?
It's not because it's not an What I'm saying is, if you're asking what's being done right now, I gave you an example. You asked, what are NBA players doing right now? I said Donovan Mitchell is leveraging his sponsorship to say that, okay, for the first $45,000 worth of shoes that I sell, Adidas is going to match that. And we're going to use this money as a scholarship to help Jacob Blake's children.
So this is the thing. So this is the thing. That's nice.
I think that's a start.
No. So let's break this down. That's nice. That's nice, right? But how does that create institution where it's one family being affected by trauma? And I'm not dissing that. And ain't nothing came out that brother's pocket. Nothing has come out of his pocket. So where's the sacrifice? Where is the sacrifice?
He does other stuff outside. But see, that you asked for I gave you an example for now. These cats do stuff outside of their normal range. And if you're asking, what can they do? If they're leveraging shoe companies to donate, that's a positive. You ask what they can do. And even if it's not, hypothetically, let's say it's not out of his pocket and the shoe company gave it.
Right.
Chuck D said that thing back in the early 90s, shut him down. Chuck D asked Nike to put money in the community back then on the song Shut Him Down. So this has been a cry back then. And if athletes can finally get that done, that's a step in the right direction. That's one step. Now, once again, I don't know.
So what has that move? And let me tell you, y'all, I'm not knocking the move, but why is that? How is that so radical? It's already been done before. How do you expect radical change when you're doing the same shit?
Well, people keep asking for the same shit.
Who?
Well, once again, are you looking at this from your perspective, or are you looking at this from how other people think? Because your wishes and your perspectives are different than the masses of people who are living in this world. People don't think like you.
And this is why we have this moment right now where people are going buck wild in the streets, because there is this one note or way of thinking.
Once again, people don't
care about this stuff. You don't even watch.
People care, but people care in a different way.
No, I'm saying is that the thing is that a lot what I am hearing. So I'm giving you the feedback that I hear from students, from people that I interview. None of this means anything because people are suffering. Like matching a scholarship for somebody, it's good, but it doesn't. It's not a long-term solution.
So let me ask you this.
It is a quick Band-Aid. So the question, the setup question is that what can professional athletes do at this moment? Maybe it should have added the fact, in order to have sustainable long-term institutional change.
Okay, what institutions are we trying to
whichever, what?
No, we got to be clear,
Economics,
because if you want institutional
social
change,
justice, right?
okay, justice. Okay, so we're gonna start with justice. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay, so what justice? Because once again, Kim Kardashian got some people freed. NBA players have it. Maya Moore has. So let's talk about.
Don't ever mention Kim
How does that look?
Kardashian
What
on this ever.
What?
Ever. My goodness, please. You know
Okay,
what?
now.
After she done sucked the life out of goddamn 25 black men, she gonna help get some exonerated. Okay.
Hey, well, this is the world we live in. I did not write this script. I'm just talking about what I've seen. Whether you like it or not, this is what happens. Now, I'll say this. So if you're talking justice, how are you saying that NBA players are lawyers? What can they do from a justice?
Hold on for a minute. Justice.
Question. What is an initiative that you think they should go with? Okay, the institution of a justice. Okay, you said the institutional situation of justice, right? I asked you what institutional change they need to address. You said justice.
Yes.
Okay,
justice.
So how can the NBA players impact that from your perspective?
Good question. No, that's a really good question. So instead of saying, okay, so put money into funding an institute that trains, does multiple things, that places lobbyists and people in order to change the laws in the states in terms of how police officers, the rules and regulations around police officers, train lawyers, educate folk about their rights. Yeah. So that's one.
Okay,
word.
so let me ask you this. So in between, so let me ask you this.
And at the same time,
hold on a second. In between weight training, take care of their family, shooting 1,000 jump shots a day, twice a day, you want them to write this program out?
No, I didn't say write the program.
Okay, so that goes back to my other. That goes back to my initial position, where the community needs to come into place and have these situations in place.
I actually said that to put money into an institute. I didn't say.
Is there one in place?
Intellectual one.
No,
there's not one in place, but I actually do know several people who are looking for funders who are legitimate to do so.
Okay. Now but do they know about this organization?
That's why I asked the question: who do they talk to?
Who knows?
That's why I asked the question, like, who are these people?
But once again, we assume that everybody knows everything that you know.
No, I'm not. But that's why
and
I
once
asked,
again,
who are
the
they
people
talking
they
to?
know,
Because
and do we know about these initiatives? That's the thing about it. We expect. When I say we expect, what else can we expect of them? How do we expect them to know all of that? We have to create the avenues of connections. That's my
why
position.
I asked the question.
And I'm responding to the question. It may not be what you want, what people want to hear, but this is my perspective. If someone doesn't know, there's a barrier. You have to break that barrier down. And if they don't know that an institution is like this, maybe somewhere, somehow, they need to get in front of the people or make themselves accessible using the platforms that these NBA players are using right now. But if we don't want to accept that platform they're using to get to the table, it's going to be more of the same old, same old.
I understand what you're talking about, but I think one of the kind of like the things in which I don't, so this is the thing, I agree with what it is you say. The part that is confusing to me is that when I say that question, like, who are they talking to? And I guess maybe I should have explained that is it implies there is no, there's such a gap, which I was talking about, this upper echelon, this circle, this bubble that they're existing in is not trickling down or opening up enough where they can have like these conversations, right? Or have these connections. So that's what I meant by that.
But that's the problem too, because they can't address that. If you can't identify a Black leader in the community, how do you expect them to do it?
Well, I didn't say that these people have got to be quote unquote leaders. I think that's the problem. I think that's the
take that word out, leadership take that word. I mean, whatever. I've used that word. I don't follow that word like that, but what I mean is whoever influence, whatever term we want to, leader, influencer,
yeah, I think that's the
advocate.
problem. I think that's the problem. We have bought into this such a celebrity culture. Because one of the things I said is that just regular everyday people have some of the best solutions. They just don't have the resources. Right? You know what I'm saying? So because we're so caught up in the celebrity culture, go back, like you said, we assume that, because you have this money and because we see you on TV all the time, you must be a leader. You know what I'm saying? It don't work like that.
Right.
But, so there needs to be, and we don't have this, there needs to be some type of linkages that goes on that connects people who have resources or can leverage with people who have like real straight up solutions. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like that's what's missing. Like if Ark Republic got $300,000 today, do you know what I could do with $300,000? You know,
right.
So, right.
But see, that goes to the point. But see, I think we're asking the NBA players to solve a problem that's way more complex.
But I'm right. So the thing is that I'm not asking the NBA players to solve a problem. I'm just asking them to be more effectively part of the solution.
And I see that perspective. You know why I see that perspective? Because I understand your passion. However, I also look at other people who may not understand that. Mm-hmm. And who understand things to a certain level. You're like, you really think that? I'm like, dang, they really think that. Is people really think these things? But from my experience as an interpreter, I have to stay in the middle, and I'm not going to move. I'm moved when it's time to move, but my perception and analysis is straight middle. My decision making is going to be hardcore. But as I see this play out, when I see where they've come, where the NBA players have come from and where they are now, big change. When I look over the record and I've traveled places and seen like, dang, y'all doing this over here? I didn't know that. That's dope. What you see in the media and what you do behind the scenes are two different things. I've seen things from people, so I personally have a greater appreciation for the little things that people do. But on this grand macro scale, it's problematic because we don't have it down. And once again, that connection and that channel and that chain in our communities and our networks isn't necessarily strong or isn't necessarily linking. So that has to be the opportunity now that we take, okay, at least you guys are here. How can we take you here and then up here, or even go from here wider? That has to be the thing. What's good? What can we sift out, or what can be sifted out? What can be kept and refined? And that's, I don't think, but there is no one answer. There's no panacea right now, because we don't even have it right now. We can't even say we got our own hospital to go to. We can't say that we got a grocery store. We can't say that it's a bank there. We got a couple black banks, but it needs to be a stronger, more furtive banking system. We need alternatives. Now I can see people are talking alternatives, but is nobody talking alternatives? Right.
And let me say this in terms of about institution building. I think we all need to be very clear. At one point, everything it is, we've had hospitals, movie theaters, hotels, banks, very effective banks, great communities, farmers, we could feed ourselves. We could do all of that. But the system in which we're in, literally, and I'm not talking about through legislation, I'm talking about literally neutralized, bombed, killed these communities. Because the only thing we didn't have was a military. I mean, I mean, let's keep it a buck.
Keep it a buck. No, we had one. We just fought for the wrong team.
Right, exactly. We had military personnel. Little did they know that the people in the military, the whites in the military, will use that training and turn it against their own Black citizens. So I mean, that's another thing. You know what I mean? It's like people like, we don't have institutions. We actually did have institutions.
But you know what? To your point earlier, I think, you know, as we compare that civil rights struggle versus what we're going through now, I think one of the biggest difference is the fact that while the money can be more direct and effective back then because we were so excluded, from participating in society.
That's true. Mm-hmm.
So now we're incorporated, and that money has to be extrapolated from different entities in different places. So we got to look at the time change. What was and what we had was really effective, but we gave that up to prove to America that, hey, we're quality people. We want to be part of this. It was a strategy to show that, okay, hey, we okay people, I believe. It turned out not to be good, or it turned out that, you know what, they abused that strategy we used. They abused that opportunity. So now as we go back and review this film and say, what can we do different? And now we have to try to figure out, I think, once again, it may not be enough, but the fact that some of these cats are aware, there's an awakening. It's okay, maybe I've been doing stuff wrong. Maybe these things I need to start walking back. It's not going to happen overnight.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not going to happen in 31 days. We can only hope that the sustained effort and that more people get involved with alternative ideas and flexible ideas and even more flexible patience, because everyone can't have what they want. It's going to have to be some compromise. And in order for us to make this change, we got to look at the past and say, okay, what went wrong? Oh, we didn't have a military back then. Let's get this military right. And so we need to make sure we do things now in a different pace, in a different space that allows us to hear everybody's perspective. But no, I think having one monolithic idea or one quote unquote leader would be ineffective. We need divergent ideas in order to make this movement go forward and be wide and long. And you got to be able to see every angle, because it goes back to refereeing. What I saw in one position on the floor is different than what my partner saw. And I can't expect him to see or her to see what I saw, and she can't expect me to see what she saw. So we work differently. We see different things. We complement each other.
And this is another thing. Let me add this is that even though we have radically different ways in which we approach it, all voices and energy is needed. You know what I mean? And I think that's another thing is that we can fuss and fight. You'll always be my homie. Shoot, you know what I'm saying?
I mean, you're supposed to fuss and fight. I ain't supposed to agree with everybody.
Exactly. This is like iron sharpens iron, right?
Yeah.
So, or iron sharpens iron, right? So this is, we are at such a critical moment. Like for me, I'm like, we are at such, so when all of this started, I'm not going to lie. A lot of people's like, this ain't going to go nowhere. This is not. And then people were like, oh shoot, this is a thing. So then people were like, well, how do we harness this energy and direct it towards what we need to direct it to change? Then it fizzled out. Now it has emerged again, and people are like, oh, I don't think this is going anywhere until we get some substantive change. And so now we're in this question of what does change look like, right? How, are we moving towards that for real? I think also in the case of what we call professional athletes, I really also, they're thinking about what is this industry going to look like on the other side of this? And even maybe perhaps people coming up before me. I'm really thinking about, I'm seeing that they're really having this sense of collective conscious of this is, for them to do that. Let me acknowledge that. Y'all don't. Y'all don't. Let me say that. And you are thinking outside of the individual. Thank you. I appreciate that, because this world right now, or for a very long time, was about selfies and individualism. For real.
I was gonna say that. We went 20, and see that's the elephant in the room. Right? We went the last 20, 25 years with a generation of Black kids not realizing they was Black.
Right.
And so now, when they did that strike on Wednesday, they're like, look, pause. This is a day of reflection. Hold up. What's happening? you got to respect that. For as black men to sit there and say, hold on, this ain't right. And when you see
and women, black men and women now, you gotta.
No, I get that. It's an equality, but I'm not disputing that. But right now I'm gonna speak for the brothers. Because I think a lot of times there's a narrative that has us coming out as very misogynistic in a certain way.
No, I agree.
We don't have feelings.
I agree.
But when you see these brothers having these emotions, when you see a father crying about his son, I refuse to sit here and not acknowledge the fact that, you know what, I respect the women because I came from a woman, but I'm not going to sit here and not be able to speak on how the brothers are trying. Some, not all, but the ones that are out there trying. When you see brothers out here expressing their emotions that are crying. They say black men are always this. We don't see black men crying. We don't see black men emotive. We always see us as being thugs and whatever in the videos. So we have to give proper respect and space right now to this perspective, even though it's the first step. And that is not to say that the women in the WNBA are not doing their thing, but understand this. I look at this as cooperation because the NBA players are helping support some of the players who did not.
That's
play.
right.
So they're helping
I had that down. I'm sorry, I forgot to say that.
This is never an issue of or for me. It's always a comma. But right now, on the comma before, the first comma is the man part for me, and I'm gonna give it its proper space because too many times we get vilified, and I'm giving these brothers space to say, you know what? How they're expressing themselves when they never had to do it. That's some hard stuff. It's hard to be vulnerable. And a lot of these cats are being vulnerable possibly for the very first time. So once again, how they process this and how this comes off and how they manage it and how this moves, only time is going to tell. Because at the end of the day, I'm not bouncing the ball. I'm not signing the checks. I'm an occasional spectator and I read the news. But at the end of the day, they're going to navigate this through the circles and the support groups that they have. But what we have to do is surround that and inculcate them with people who have different perspectives or different views of things that are willing to listen and say, hey, okay, you know what? I'm gonna bring a sponge instead of a brick. I'm gonna absorb what I can take and wring out what I don't need. But I ain't bringing no bricks because I want to bash nobody on the head. We need to stop bringing bricks and bring sponges so we can absorb more and see what we can keep and use.
And I think it's right. And I think it's also important to know that I think that one, let me say before I go into my diatribe, I acknowledge you, I celebrate you, and I honor the space that you have created for yourself. It is absolutely needed because in my opinion, I think that a certain segment of Black men specifically took a huge hit and became somehow the problems that we have of the world. How? I don't know. At the same time, as a woman, I must acknowledge the WNBA because they are the lowest paid out of all of the athletes that are protesting. They are the lowest paid. They are the bottom of the financial rung, but they are the ones who have sustained this very radical voice in all of this. I acknowledge that, and as a woman, as a Black woman, I understand, you know what I'm saying, what that's like. And I think what we're learning is that we can be different and have kind of different kind of fights, but in the same battle. You know what I'm saying? You know
Mixed martial arts.
You know what I mean? So I think that's something that we really need to work on. Yeah. Because that has totally been stripped, you know, from us. And this has nothing to do with sexuality, right?
Right.
This has absolutely nothing to do with sexuality.
Right.
So I want to say that, and I must acknowledge the men in the professional athletes who did not who acknowledged the WNBA and the women, and also there's this tennis player.
Naomi Osaka.
Yes, Naomi Osaka, who was she's the only one. Everybody else is still playing. Serena Williams.
But see, this is so much, and see, that's the thing. There's so many Black people that get along, that work together. Right. We don't hear that. And the fact that, like you said, the WNBA is a partner. They all move together. They all, we move. What y'all do, we move. Like y'all doing this, okay, we doing this too. And so that's the beautiful thing. And I think even, you know, Harriet had the shotgun, so we need WNBA to do their thing. They are Harriets. You know, I think everybody has a role. everybody's role is valued, and we in this together.
Right. We are totally in this together. And I really feel, this is it's an honor for me to be here at this moment. And I think as maybe a couple of generations from those who are heavily protesting, part of our responsibility is to question, is to challenge, is to restructure, and to offer criticisms, right? And or constructive criticisms. It's like, I'm not saying this because I hate you and I want to see you lose. I want us all to win. And because I want us all to win, and I've gotten a little pudgy in the waist and I ain't as fast as I used to be, I'm gonna play my part. And my part is that, look here, young folk. Let's see what we got going on here. And I think that's what I enjoy. I enjoy that now. I embrace that part of me.
Right. And that's the thing too, we come from different, I think you go through life, you travel through different spheres and sectors of life, and you figure out what's manageable in terms of how you elocute yourself or articulate your emotions. And it's like, I think that was the benefit of being an interpreter, understanding how different people speak and not being able to be offended, but like, okay, you know what? I understand this is passion and concern and not attack, and I think that's where we have to move, especially now. This is a very dangerous phase. We either get it right or it's another, set of, it's the best it's the best we can do. It's the lesser of two evils. It's gonna be back to that. So we gotta try something else. We gotta try to incorporate those soft skills to make sure that, we connect everybody together, because everybody is saying the same thing, but it's just in a different language. Right. It's in a different register. So let's get this right in a way that, okay, you know what? Let's take where you are now. Let's bring this way. Oh, I didn't know you guys look this way. Let me change my perspective. And if we all are flexible, man, we can get so much farther. And that doesn't mean that we are capitulating. But once again, we got to have a clear-cut idea. And those who have the ideas need to articulate that, so that when we come to the table, people are like, oh, I was thinking that. I didn't know that's what that was called.
So as a professor, and when I taught at Rutgers University, I would have football players in my class. I would have other athletes too, lady athletes and everything like that. But I remember I got into this really interesting discussion with Black male athletes, with football players. And a lot of what they had been, a lot of their learnings were very Trump-esque. And I think part of what we're seeing is, I want to say, the wave of professional athletes prior to more lean towards Trump than they would lean towards an Obama in their politics. So we're also, you know what I mean? I mean, hence you have Herschel Walker and these people at the, Republican National Convention coming out in support, because Trump represented a narrative of being tough, of being, about money, all of those things, and even hip hop. Let's be honest.
See, that's another thing. I'm mad at Raekwon. I'm mad at Nas.
You know what I'm saying? Like, even hip hop.
But they're my homies.
Is responsible, right?
Yeah. But we didn't know back then when they was talking about guess who the Black Trump.
Right. Well, I mean,
it was a status. It was status.
But what it is that part of the responsibility that I think that this generation that we have is that we do need to be very vocal. Like, nah, Diddy, don't walk around here talk about Black love when you have not publicly said at one point in time, I supported this thought, this thinking, and this behavior. I am changing. And I want to show you that there is an evolution in all of this. Like, I think that's part of our responsibility is that we made a lot of mistakes. We totally embracing this capitalistic, misogynistic culture in order to get ahead, because that was what we thought what it was when Black power didn't work.
Right. But you know what, to your point, but let's flesh out this whole college football thing, because you got to look at too, a lot of these schools are Republican, their donors are Republicans. So if you go to a football school, a school like that, like a UGA, and every summer you're working for a Republican donor, or in the case of the guy that's what's it, David Cameron, is he the Attorney General in Kentucky?
Let me look and see.
I think he played football, and who's to say that, you know, he didn't curry connections through a booster association that allowed him to get the job or get into grad school, get the job he wanted, clerking, working for Mitch McConnell, and then boom, now he's appointed AG. So you look at the connections that these players inure at these PWIs. That is something that draws on their loyalty. I mean, who talking about? I mean, even though he freed me, if I'm the lady who he freed, I don't know if I'm going to speak for this dude, but she felt compelled to speak. Alice Johnson, she felt compelled to speak during the convention. So people find loyalty when they found favor. And I think those are the challenges. Now, how do we fix those? If more kids went to Black colleges, that influence will be different. They will be, you know, away from those type of influences when they go to college. And they'll be by different type of people.
Well, that's Daniel Cameron. He was the AG.
Daniel Cameron.
The AG.
I said David, I misspoke. Daniel.
Yeah. So Daniel Cameron. I mean, so the thing is that you went to an HBCU. I went to 2 HBCUs. I think HBCUs are a great start, but even in those institutions, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. However, right. You know what I'm saying? There's still my point of view, honestly, is to provide, for me, to totally disrupt this idea that being at an HBCU means that your experience will not be as rich, or your chances to be in a professional space should not be as rich, because statistically, most Black professionals are coming out of, historically, HBCUs.
Right.
You know what I mean? So why can't it be professional athletes?
We got to do a better job.
Yeah. But HBCUs,
we got to do a better job. And so let's go back. So let's talk about what the athletes are doing. So did you see during the bubble, every game, Chris Paul had a different Black college shoe on.
Oh, so, interesting. Okay.
So one day he had Winston-Salem State, one day he had Livingstone, one day he had, you know, every game he played with a different college's shoe that's going to be used as a fundraiser. So I think once again,
that's dope.
But once again, when I say it's a community effort, right. I mean that. It's not going to be the popular effort, but many of our HBCUs are not ready or prepared to accept an influx of athletes. There may be 4 or 5, but we have to do a better job of preparing and modernizing and getting rid of our historical Black thinking and come to something more modern. You know, whether it's the board of directors, whether it's the trustees, whether it's the religious affiliations, there are a lot of things that hold back HBCUs from modernizing and being ready for right now, because many of them aren't. And if somebody wants to donate $1 million, who gonna get it? Maybe Morehouse, maybe Howard, maybe Spelman, maybe Hampton. Why? Because they ready. So the rest of us need to get ready. The rest of us needs to come with a blueprint to say, okay, this is our readiness.
Right. And I mean, and even that's debatable in terms of who's ready and what institution is ready versus what institution is not ready, right? Because you just listed all private institutions and not publicly owned institutions. And as going to a private institution as well, a lot of those dirty little secrets are often kept behind closed doors. Okay.
So even the shiny 4 or 5, I'm not saying that, but this is what you hear as, oh, there are only certain colleges that get the money. Right. Well, certain colleges position themselves to get the money.
Right.
So the rest of us need to position ourselves to get the money, so we can create some systemic changes, some curriculum changes that are modernized, that don't make the students incur debt, that can come out of school, that can attract athletes, that can keep athletes. So it can be done, but we gotta, you know. Yeah,
there's a lot. So I think with the HBCUs, one of the biggest issues is that HBCUs also operate as the serious breeding ground for gatekeepers and gatekeeping, right? And so if you have, and if you look at the history of HBCUs, Jackson State, Southern University, Florida A&M, Morehouse College, there were these historical protests that went on about these Negro-led gatekeepers at these institutions that did not push for radical change. Perhaps if you did allow people who were innovative and bold in the change, then HBCUs wouldn't be sputtering for life as we have now. For me, one of the issues is that how do you have an athlete that expects a certain experience and to be respected for their Black power, go to an HBCU that historically has cut off Black power? That would be a very interesting dynamic.
Right. And so that's what I think that is that's one of the things I think that is the challenge is we can't expect to change using this way of thinking. Mm-hmm. We have to think and evaluate this new era with new perspectives and new metrics. Because as long as we're using their metrics and their system of measurement, we're never going to get the type of leadership or creativity that we need. And, if we're going to reject the system, we have to reject how, we evaluate, we put people in power, we choose our leadership. We have to come up with a different lane on this highway that allows us to say, when it's time to use the standard, we go in this lane. But when it's time for the rest of the 22 hours or the 16 hours of the day, we in this lane, this is how we communicate with each other. And so that has to be a challenge too, because we can't ask, just because it's a PhD doesn't mean you're the smartest apple in the room. Right. And that person who may just have a bachelor's degree may have some great ideas, may have the best personality, and they can galvanize people and have the right type of leadership. So we got to find different ways to find the best people.
So this is something, I've been thinking about a lot, is that, so let me talk about particularly the athlete, but this goes with students. It's like when you go to college, or even if you're in a certificate program, whatever it is, the question I think that we don't really ask is that what do you want in this outside of a job? For a Black person, outside of a job, what do you want? I think part of the HBCU initiative, well-intentioned and good, must offer that athlete something that is outside of athleticism, right? Whatever that looks like. I don't know what that looks like, but because if all they do is play ball, they could have done that at Ohio State. So I think that's and much more than, but this goes with all of, I think maybe this, not I think, but with all the students is that the way in which, and this is the radical change I think we're talking about, is in terms of the way in which we see education and growth and development must totally be reconfigured. And when these kids are coming to school.
Right. So I think, to your point, it just can't start in the colleges. So when I made the comment earlier that, athletes sponsor kids to travel, a lot of those programs function as mentoring programs. It's not just about shoes and getting out the hood and promoting gentrification or whatever. It's about, okay, how do I learn how to relate with other men, communicate? If I've never, I don't know, do you remember the song by Common that said, I talked to my man about traveling the world, how that sound? He said it's hard to imagine he never been past downtown. That's a crisis. And it's not just some utopian, idealistic stuff, but we got to get people to think, okay, what's beyond the block? And that doesn't necessarily, just because you leave the block don't necessarily mean you leave the hood. Or excuse me, just you leave the hood don't necessarily mean you leave the block. Because as you go, you're influenced by the creativity, the energy, and you know what to bring back. And you know how to uplift people. And I think all these things are what contribute to, the education. It's the athletic programs. It's the Black colleges linking up with high schools, linking up with elementary schools, linking up with middle schools. There has to be a network where there are some standard practices, or not even standard, but some options that are consistent, that when a child gets to an HBCU or gets to college, I know how to navigate these spaces. I know how to, but we can't just all of a sudden expect presto, as soon as you get to a college, I know what to do. And we got to be able to have these so they can say, okay, this is the blueprint. This is how we need to push our boundaries as Black colleges. This is how we need to expand our programming, alter our curriculum. Maybe it's not a 4-year degree. Maybe it's 2-year degrees. And understand for a 2-year degree, you're still a Black college. And you're being a more effective Black college because you're getting kids out of school with debt that's coming out getting a job or a career, whether it's in IT, whether it's agriculture, whether it's in hospitality, whether it's in, construction. These are industries that we can still get into that don't require us to, professional sharecrop our intellectual abilities.
Right. I think this requires another conversation. I hope we do this regularly. This is like we got to call this like because we duking it out. We fighting it out.
Yeah, that's a chess match.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah, totally. And I just want to say this. In terms of you only know the Block is not just a Black thing. I think when it becomes a Black thing, or we say we put Black people in the face, it becomes something that is pathological. There are studies that show that there are a whole bunch of white communities that build these kind of vacuums so they don't have to engage. I've taught quite a few from South Jersey, right?
Kansas.
You know what I'm saying? Exactly. There you go. Go. So let's it's just that they don't have the option or the understanding that they could travel outside. That is when it becomes.
But see, the big difference is between those two. You can put cows in Kansas. You can't put no cows on the Block. So one offers an economic opportunity that the other one doesn't. And like I said, I value the Block in the hood for what it offers, but at the end of the day, when you live on a farm or a little isolated rural road, you can put some cows, some chicken, and plant some hay and make some money if the government ain't messing up the import-export.
Right. But let me tell you, right. So what I'm telling you is that there's a crisis of socialization and learning on both ends. I've taught these white kids. Yeah. You know what I mean? That when we talk about racism, they get real like crazy because they're like, are you calling me a racist? Are you calling me you know what I mean? Because there is no engagement with people that don't look like them at all. You know what I mean? And so it looks something else on our end. So I just like, try to work through kind of like looking at it like, this is not just this phenomenon that happens, blah, blah, blah. But we gotta wrap this up, my brother.
But you know what, real quick, do you realize they also get persecuted by their rich white relatives and the upper class? So they get it from both ends. While they think they're entitled, they're looked down upon. And especially...
You talking about poor white people?
Like I said, when you look at the farmers and the bankers and the people in those areas, the people who I engaged, because I actually had to have some conversations in Kansas, I was like, for real? And you find out some stuff, man, in Paola, Kansas.
Oh yeah, trust me. I remember I was a cashier at a Whole Foods in Edgewater, New Jersey, and I have never seen so much class conflict. I mean, white folk was throwing food at the other white folk when they didn't have the money, or it was just straight. I was just like, damn, y'all get down like that out here? Yeah.
Man, so it's real.
It's very, very real. Mm-hmm. So I thank you so very much for joining me. Yes, I hope we do this more often if it's okay with you. All right. So once again, this is Mikhail Furnace, who is discussing sports and shit. I don't know. We were doing all types of stuff.
Yeah, sports and shit. Let's go with it.
But can you just please add a word or say a word to those professional athletes who are out there, doing their thing? A word of encouragement.
Yeah, I like to just say, keep on keeping on. Keep one foot in front of the other. Don't let anybody deter you. Acknowledge your voice and listen to your heart. It's a long, this fight is just like a game. It's 4 quarters and we may have to go overtime. So let's just gear up. We're going to root for you to shoot jump shots. We're going to root for you in the struggle.
And in the words of the great Nip, it's a marathon. 10 toes down.
10 toes down. All money in.
All money in.